There's a darkness in the world we pretend not to see, but we see it here at Paranormal M. Every episode explores that eerie truth hiding in plain sight. Subscribe and click the bell. You're not alone anymore. Cat ghosts, other or just unusual phenomena. I live in a house that's roughly 30 years old with my kids and wife. We've noticed over time odd activity. My youngest has complained of feeling a light pressure pressing down on his back or stomach at night, and a presence. And despite being a good sleeper now, has had bad sleeping cycles. My eldest says that he used to be scared of a white orb floating around at night. I was laying in bed one night with our still alive female cat sleeping next to my chest. It was extremely quiet, and then I heard the distinctive sound of when the tips of cat's paws tap on the wooden veneer floor as cat walks, which was coming into the bedroom, but from where I saw nothing. My sleeping cat suddenly woke up with a start and a soft, startled meow at that moment too. She'd heard it too, and sensed something as well. She was uneasy for a good while, looking at the spot, before finally going back to sleep. Now, a while back, we had two other cats that passed away from kidney failure and FIPS, respectively. FIPS? I'd helped bury them, but also had to later move their little graves closer to the house. On the side of the bedrooms and right next to the laundry door exit. This was because the retaining wall near where they were buried had to be completely replaced. It was otherwise going to collapse. Back to the phenomenon. I dreamt of our male black cat that I was very fond of, but had died of kidney failure. In the dream, I seemed to wake up in bed I was sleeping in, but he was sitting happily in my chest. He seemed to happily watch me, and then got up and seemed to float into the ensuite bathroom. He sat on the table, looked back at me, and vanished. Then I woke up. I felt like he was saying goodbye or hello, but maybe that was just my mind processing his death years later. However, it was very realistic and felt like I was really awake at the time. I did not feel fear, but at first joy and then upset when he was gone. My youngest also complained that he feels like he's being watched sometimes. Doesn't want to roll over to look at where he thinks he's being watched from. The other cat that died from FIPS, meantime, was a kitten. My eldest claims he saw her little ghost cat out of his window years ago one night and was terrified. These events all seemed to happen after I moved the graves. I've also had strange events like the fire alarm going off at me suddenly one night, and then switching itself off, probably just a fault. A door that didn't want to stay closed for a couple of weeks, and then suddenly stopped being an issue. Also odd sounds, and I swore I've heard strange meows very rarely. I've also tried to play with the air conditioner in the house, and open and close other doors to repeat the door phenomenon, but I can't. I've further had what some would call exploding head syndrome several times while sleeping. All of the events happen within a certain region of the house that's nearest the graves. My side of the bed is also the side next to these phenomenon, while my wife's side doesn't have them. She, however, says the one time she was in the kitchen, she looked up and both felt and vaguely saw a man in the doorway, who then ran at her and vanished. He said he seemed cross, or rather she said he seemed cross, with her being there, but this never happened again. However, this was before the moving of the cat graves. Also, our one living cat has become more scared of things in general. Seems to often look out through the laundry. Maybe I'm overplaying this, and my youngest is going through a developmental phase. It just seems odd because I did feel like I had similar experiences when I was younger too. I felt I was touched on my shoulder by my grandfather's ghost on the day he was buried. A sort of cold electric feeling at best. I can describe that scared me like, well, I felt a presence behind me. This was inside his house and near where he actually died. And I've also seen a glass cup slide across a level table, and seen several times when our pets, cats and dogs, back when I was a kid, all look at the same spot in my parents' house, then immediately run away in the same instant. Also in different directions as if running for their lives. That was in a house where the previous owner died in a car accident. I felt sometimes like I was being watched while in my bedroom. I also once had a bike chain I would hang on my door. My father once asked why I was clattering the chain at night. I didn't ever do that. There are others I could also share, but really I think I'm just highlighting how these strange cat-related phenomena in my current home are not entirely alien. Creepy things that happened to me in childhood. I have some eerie memories that I hardly think about, but never forget. When they pop back up in my head, I get the creeps and my hair stands on end every time. Maybe you will find them interesting. A pretty foggy one was about at age 3. I very well could have imagined it. I remember walking down the hallway with the lights off, and there was a shadow thing crawling on the ceiling above me, following me. I turned to my mom's bedroom to see if it would be in there and go in there too. Turned to look and it was gone. I sat down in front of my mom's mirror. Something is strange about my reflection. I'm smiling but don't remember feeling happy. I turned my head from side to side and the reflection didn't move. It was still looking at me, smiling. When I was 5 or 6, I had to pee super bad and ran into the bathroom and sat on the loo to do so. I looked up at the corner and I noticed a glass on the edge of it. I thought to myself, that's really close to the edge. I hope it doesn't fall. As I'm looking at it, the glass slid off the counter, shattered on the floor. My stepdad came rushing in. What the fuck are you breaking in here? Why would you do that? I told him exactly what happened. I didn't do it. It did it by itself. I saw it happen. My little arms couldn't even reach from the toilet. Why would I block my way out of the door with broken glass? Like, it didn't make sense. But he called me a liar and he made me eat soap in my mouth. When I was 8, my family moved into an old house. It's where I always felt like I was being watched, and sometimes I would have strange dreams and feelings of being scared at night. I'd wake up and look at my alarm clock, and I swear every time it was 3 a.m. Nearly every day I would feel like someone was looking at me when no one was around, even though I saw a silhouette of a person in my peripheral vision, and then would turn and no one would be there. The reoccurring dream I had a few times was from my point of view, walking in a meadow, distantly following a girl with light-colored long hair. She was wearing a white nightgown. I remember when I got a new bed. It's just the kind I wanted for my 9th birthday, with a little bookshelf situation for a headboard. I immediately put my books there. Some were pretty heavy. They stayed put there for months. One night I was feeling especially vulnerable, and the creepy feeling was strong enough that I didn't want to look around my dark room for fear of seeing whatever I felt was watching me. I built a pillow fort around my head and eventually fell asleep. I started having the meadow dream. I was following the girl, but this time she stopped. She slowly started turning around, and this was weird because the dream was always the same. She always kept walking, and she never turned around where I could see her face. Just when I should have been able to see her face, I still couldn't because I did not, or rather, she did not have a face. I felt panic, and then I woke up and all of my heavy-ass books sliding off my bookshelf onto my face. Well, they would have if not for my last-minute pillow fort. I looked at my alarm clock and 3:01 a.m. There wasn't anyone in the room with me, and the shelf was still perfectly intact. I don't know what happened. One night, I was like 11, I think. I woke up to a strange sound in my closet. Looked at my clock, and it was 3 a.m. I'm just awake listening to what I could only describe as the sound of a shovel piercing dirt, then tossing the dirt to the side, over and over again. When it stopped, I got up and looked, but of course found nothing. When I was 13, I had friends start sleeping over. Every one of them said my house felt creepy. And one night, my best friend and I were sleeping in the same bed, and I woke up to her screaming at the top of her lungs. My mom comes running in saying, What happened? Are you guys okay?" She was sleeping. We woke her up and asked if she was okay. Told her she was screaming like she was terrified and asked what she was dreaming about. She couldn't remember. Said she was fine. I was too flustered to check the time, but I imagine it was more than likely around 3 a.m. I remember when my parents started leaving my brother and I home alone. One night we were in the living room watching TV, when a painting abruptly fell from the wall next to us. My boyfriend and I had the same dream, and at the same time, creepy. Alright, gather around, y'all. This is going to be a very creepy true story time. And I need to add context, but if you want to skip to the scary part, then start at paragraph 4. The dream starts with 2 girls standing on my porch. They were very pretty, but what made them stand out was that they were wearing clothes from the 1800s. And although the rest of the dream was in color, they were in shades of gray like an old black and white picture. They asked me if they could wait for their bus on the porch. I told them sure, no problem, and come back to my chores. I was listening to music and one of the girls commented, "Is that Tupac? He's one of my favorite artists." I was like, "Mine too." Went outside to talk to them for a while. I come back inside and I'm busy cooking when I get this really eerie feeling, like if something is behind me. One of the girls is standing inside the house, but she's warped in a shadow demon with a big creepy smile full of jagged teeth. I knew that I'd locked the door and, terrified, I shouted, "Get out of here! How'd you get in here?" Then her friend came in too. She went through the wall like a ghost. So now I had 2 9-foot-tall shadow demons slowly approaching me, with wide, unblinking eyes and huge, jagged smiles. I go into a panic and I start doing everything I can to try and get rid of them, but they wouldn't leave. They kept coming closer and closer, and then I woke up and was really tripping out. So I woke my boyfriend up to tell him about my dream. He looked at me in disbelief. He just had the exact same dream, but in his dreams, the ghosts were male. Am I being haunted? Ouija board infested house. I recently moved into a 3-bedroom trailer by myself, with my 2 cats in the beginning of March. Here and there I would hear things and brush it off as the cats. Well, for the past 5 nights I'm barely getting any sleep. Things are getting weird. I always fall asleep, but keep waking up to strange sounds or feelings, like someone's in the room with me and watching me. and then I'm just stuck being awake for the remainder of the night. So I'll go into the living room to watch TV. Well, I started taking melatonin, thinking it would help me sleep all night long. No, it's not. It's 3 a.m. and I wake up in a panic attack, just feeling so weird. I'm having vivid dreams about running out of a house and demons are pulling me back into the house. I'm waking up to the sounds of something tapping in the kitchen or the living room. And one night a few weeks ago, I'm almost asleep, I heard a child's voice say hello. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe it was just because I was falling asleep and my brain's having auditory hallucinations. But last night, I woke up around 11 a.m., went into the living room to watch TV, and sometime after midnight, one of my cats was sitting on the coffee table, sat up really fast and just stared at my bedroom through the kitchen. I said her name and her ears moved to acknowledge that she heard me, but she wouldn't look away. At first, I was like, oh, it's just a bug. But she chases bugs, and she wasn't moving. She looked freaked out, and she eventually laid back down on the coffee table. Just kept staring at my bedroom. Around 1 a.m., I eventually go lay down to go back to sleep. Next thing I know, I'm panicking, waking up and jump out of my sleep and just do a scan of my room. Mind you, it's 3 a.m. on the dot. I'm not seeing anything creepy, well, yet. But I am feeling like there's someone or something in the room with me. Other weird sounds are happening. I'm reaching out now in case I'm being haunted before it escalates, really. I can reach out for advice, perhaps. I used to mess with Ouija boards at like 13 or 14 years old, in an obsessive way, to the point everybody in my family were seeing what we all called the shadow people. I never saw the Hat Man, well, at least personally, but my younger sisters and her friends all described seeing him when we were kids. The CDs would fly off my entertainment center. My closet door would open itself, and everyone in the house had experienced weird things. Mind you, this was the early 2000s, before we knew that other people called them shadow people and had similar experiences. So come 2010-ish, when we Googled it one day and saw it was a thing others experienced. We were all kinds of freaked out. I went to a spiritual crystal-type place after work, walked in and said, "Hey, I collect Ouija boards. Recently moved. Now I'm having a bunch of creepy stuff happen in my house." I explained briefly. "Can you help me?" This chick that worked there doesn't say a word but is staring off in the distance for about 5 minutes and then says, "You have a mirror issue," she then says. When I moved, something about the mirror opened up a portal. She said she didn't want to go into the mirror due to how scary it can be, but said the colors green and purple were coming in and out of it. She closed it off. I asked if I should cover my mirror, and she said, "Nope, it's taken care of." I asked about smudging sprays, and she said I didn't have to do that, but if it would make me feel better, I could. So I did purchase a smudging spray from there. She wasn't even trying to sell me anything, which made me believe her even more. The Ouija boards don't do anything or really cause the activity. She said they are completely fine, so I guess I can keep them because I have a lot in my collection. Thanks everybody for the suggestions. I'm going to spray the smudging spray tonight and give an update in the morning. Ended up covering the mirror, spraying the smudging spray everywhere in my house, and had a friend come sleep over just in case. I got really freaked out after my encounter with the chick at the crystal store. I didn't take any melatonin either. I slept all night long. No nightmares or strange sounds, no strange feelings either. And hopefully this issue is permanently resolved. I just want to thank everyone in this community, as I'm not really into all this stuff. But seeing everyone's comments really made me think and decide to do things I did. And I come from a non-religious household, non-religious background, not sure what I believe. I keep trying to find logical explanations of all these weird things, but it's getting more intense each night, and I'm maybe being haunted, or maybe somebody could explain all of this. I have this weird power whenever I think of someone. They reach out or appear, even after years. Back to when I was in 4th grade, I had a classmate and we weren't super close, but we were friendly for a short time. One Sunday night I had a dream about him. I don't remember what he said in it, but I clearly saw him. The next morning when I reached school, our principal told us that he had passed away in a car accident. On the exact same night I saw him in my dream. Never happened to me again, but it still chills me when I think about it. It felt like somehow I knew, or maybe he came to say goodbye. Another time when I was in 6th grade, I was walking home from tuition. I randomly thought about a friend I had in kindergarten. She'd moved to another city years ago, and I hadn't heard from her at all. Just a few minutes after I thought of her, I literally bumped into her on the street. I was shocked. Didn't even live there anymore, and she told me she was just visiting for a relative's wedding. Timing was too perfect to just be coincidence. And I've also had moments where I think of people I haven't talked to in 4 or 5 years. No connection, no contact, and nothing. And out of nowhere, they text. Do I have a stalker or a ghost? A few days ago, I sat on my porch eating an apple. When I was done with it, I threw it onto the grass by my house. It's because there's a lot of deer around, and I thought I'd enjoy a treat. But anyway, the day after it rained, so I didn't sit on my porch. The day after that, I see my old musty apple core sitting on the top of the porch where I always sit. I thought it must have been a squirrel or something that brought it up there. Weird, but not impossible. I told my dad about the situation that he had mentioned somebody stole a package of ours a couple of weeks ago. Now, we live in a very nice neighborhood, but our house is sort of tucked away, and we also have a pretty long driveway. This would not be an easy house to steal packages from. Then this had me thinking of a couple of months ago. It's when I heard a man howling outside of my living room window one night at around 2:30. And like I said, the house is tucked away with a long driveway. Our neighbors are about 5 minutes walk away. Also, we know all of our neighbors, and none would be the type to even be awake in the middle of the night, let alone pretend to howl. Another strange thing that happened was about a year ago. My sister and I were in my room having a little chat. Now, for some background, my door has a doorknob that you can only get in if you have a fingerprint or a password to it. Only my sister and I can get into my room. It was about 3:15 a.m. when we started hearing taps on the door. Immediately, we thought it was our dad trying to mess with us, so we stayed quiet. The taps then turned into scratches, and then the scratches turned into knocks. Called my mom in the next room over to ask what the fuck her husband's doing. She didn't answer, so I called my dad because I was sure I'd heard his phone ring outside my door. I didn't hear anything, but the knocks. 30 minutes had passed and we're still hearing knocks and scratches. My sister starts getting mad because this was really strange behavior if it was actually him. She gets up and tries to yank the door open with full force. The door doesn't budge. The look on her face unsettles me to this day. He had somebody holding the door handle back this whole time. A few minutes go by and I hear the beep on the doorknob, meaning somebody tried to use their fingerprint and couldn't get in. Called my dad again and finally he picks up. I asked him if he's done. He asks me done with what? I said done knocking at my door. That's when I hear my parents' bedroom door open. My dad step out of the room and I open the door. still fully believing it was him all along. Told him he can stop pretending now. Then he really freaks out and starts going downstairs to check all the locks and whatnot, and the whole time I'm thinking he's really not giving up on the act. The next day, I just I asked my mom if it was my dad all along. She said that he had been in bed the whole time. What's even going on? We've only lived here for about 1.5 years, and it's one weird thing after the other. I see floating shadow people in the graveyard every nighttime. Do you see what I see? And that's what I always ask to people around that place, especially the keeper who manages the graveyard. Some were scared, some were calling me strange or a weirdo, but luckily enough some had agreed, which was the keeper. I always go there at nighttime. That way I could quote-unquote talk to some of the shadows, especially my grandpa and grandma. I brought them banquets of flowers and peace offerings. This one time, recently a month ago, I was searching for the keeper to give him some food that I'd bought for myself, until I heard a little girl crying. She's behind an old gravestone that seemingly looked like it was rotting. She was hiding with her small, eerily white feet sticking out. I gently spoke to her, asking why she's crying. She didn't answer at first. About 5 minutes she told me no one had visited her in 1 year now, and she's missed her family. I utter some reassurances that perhaps tomorrow, or the next following days, somebody will finally come. Life may have gotten hard for her family too, but nonetheless, I'd comforted her. So before I left, I had given her food instead of eating it. I told her it's hers now, and I'll give her some flowers too from time to time as I visit my relatives. The crying, as well as the shadow behind the gravestone, had gone away. I was confused until I felt a sudden warmth around my body. It was brief, yet it made me feel relief that she wouldn't be in distress. And from that day on, I had prayed for her. And guess what? Her family members finally came. And they don't know me, but I'm truly happy that they had visited. And life goes on for me. I'm not sure what I've just found. Curious if anybody could tell me about something I found. Had to clean up an elderly family member's house. Closet had paintings of Lucifer and demons and angels. A lot of different, jars and, medicinal herbs. And a full drawer, like an 8x24, maybe by 12 inch of human hair. This family member is about 90, no longer really ambulatory. House is extremely creepy, like there's somebody watching you. Had to run out a few times, leaving the sink on, especially in this large walk-in closet where this stuff was stored. So should I be worried, and is this witchcraft? Is it something else? How can I protect myself? The floor and the wall around the paintings and stuff where things were touching was like running away even though everything else was fine. Went by myself in the kitchen. I heard something across the house move, and my mom and baby were outside. The house was empty otherwise. Maybe 1% chance of a frogger. Also, I had my son in the carrier on my back, and he was leaning around me, sort of playing peekaboo. No one else was in the room. It had such a weird, bad vibe that even after showering, it felt dirty and creeped out. So thanks for any help or recommendations, and sorry I don't know where else to go about this. I have to go back and finish cleaning, but I'm scared. Also, after going to the property and inside the house, both my son and I were up all night. And starting at 3 a.m., he wouldn't settle at all. I had to hold him as he screamed all night. It's out of character. My mom agrees the house is creepy. She hasn't noticed anything recently, but has had past experiences there. Other people have heard doors slam and footsteps and felt like they were being watched. When I say I had to run out, I literally ran. I couldn't take it. He watched over me in my sleep. To give you some context, I only have my maternal and paternal grandmothers, and my maternal grandfather. My paternal grandfather passed away years before I was born. Now let me tell you the story. When I was 14, I lived in a very old house. My parents were renovating one of the rooms because my younger sister had just been born. I was going to share that room with me. Because of that, I'm sleeping in my parents' bedroom. My mom put me in my bed in the corner near the bathroom, which was inside their room, and everything seemed fine. When it was time to sleep, I laid down facing the wall and quickly fell asleep. A few hours later, I woke up, but it was a strange kind of awakening. I simply opened my eyes and stared at the wall, and something felt wrong. I could feel the presence of a man behind me. Thought it was my dad looking for something on the floor. Maybe he headed to the bathroom, since he usually smokes while he's in there. But as time went on, the figure didn't move away. I felt like he was analyzing me, like his eyes were fixed on the back of my head. My body froze. I closed my eyes. But oddly, I didn't feel afraid, and when I closed them, the image of a man appeared in my mind, and he told me not to be scared, that he was just watching over me and protecting me from evil. After that, I fell asleep again. When I woke up, I told my mom about what had happened. She froze in front of me and said, "Sweetheart, you just described your grandfather exactly." And at that moment, my whole body went cold and I started to cry. Then she said, "Don't cry, he probably came to meet your sister. When you were born, I also felt a presence near your crib. Now that you've told me this, it makes sense. Since he never got to meet you, he must have come to see his granddaughter. But please, don't tell your dad." I agreed. Went on with our lives, and that moment just never left my memory. I needed advice or something. Since January of 2024, I've noticed some odd things happening around my apartment. I have 3 cats. I think they're experiencing things too. I just needed advice, I guess. I'm not sure, to be honest. It all started in January of 2024. I was at home and started seeing things at the corner of my eyes, like a shadow figure moving in the dark. One night I'm struggling to sleep. It was 2:30 or 3, and a figure started coming down from my ceiling, kind of like it was crawling. Turned on my light and it was gone. Thought maybe I was dreaming. A few nights later, I'm sitting on my bed petting my cat. I look out my bedroom door, which you can see the dining table. My cat walked by, the one I was petting. I looked down immediately, and there he was. But he was alerted, and something scared him. I pushed him to the side and walked out of the dining area, and it was gone. The other 2 cats were sound asleep on the couch, and since then I started seeing more things at the corner of my eye. I eventually went to the hospital because I thought I was hallucinating or something. I was cleared to go home a few hours after being seen, and the psych doctor believed I was tired or stressed, and I believed I was too. From January 2024 to December 2024, I noticed I either woke up at 3 a.m., 3:32, 33, or 34. I struggled to sleep around 3 a.m. and just couldn't sleep at all until 4 a.m. would hit. Started going to bed a bit earlier, and still would wake up at 3 a.m. mostly. Stay awake wide till 4 a.m. and then pass out. January 2025, now June 2025. I've noticed some odd finger-like bruises on my arms. One's on my leg, and either one fingerprint or 3 small scratches on my face. I don't let my cat sleep with me. Thought I was grabbing myself while I slept, but the prints were either too small or too big to be my fingerprints. My cat started acting different. Not the classic stayed sitting, or, excuse me, that's what they wrote, but I'm assuming stares. Not the classic stares at nothing and going about their business. Or states, why not? But they could be sleeping and suddenly wake up to stare into a direction, ears back with an intense stare, sometimes even running toward nothing and stopping with their backs arched. In February, I was getting ready for bed. I was in the bathroom. 2 of my cats were on the couch, staring at a section of the couch. My boy is the sweetest boy ever, and he was hella mad, ears back arched, and tail swaying back and forth. My other cat, she was crouching, kind of like she was hunting, that she was making the growling sounds. I said their names to get their attention, but nothing. I tossed a sock at the couch to get their attention. They both looked back at me and then back at the same spot. They were chill after looking at that spot. Strange. I think something was there and they didn't like it. In April, my one cat has made it his mission to sleep with me every single night now. I've had him for 6 years. And during those 6 years, he's never been allowed to sleep in my room, and especially when I sleep at night. It started out of nowhere. Just him constantly meowing and pawing at the door. I let him in, he sleeps on the pillow beside me, and that's all. It was an odd thing for him to do. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. or around then, and he's already awake or sleeping closer to me. Now, 2 days ago on June 6th around 11:30, I was heating up some food in the microwave. Didn't use or touch my stove at all that day. I was out in the living room and I heard like a spring popping sound come from the kitchen. Walked to the kitchen and see nothing, just the microwave humming. I look at the stovetop and the red light's on, indicates the stovetop's on. Walk over to my stove and the front left stovetop was on. The rings weren't red yet, but warm. It was turned to low. And I swear on my life and my grandmother's grave, I didn't touch the knobs. You have to press into the knob and turn it left. Cats aren't that smart, nor were the kitchen. Or rather, nor were they in the kitchen, probably. I was being lazy and using the microwave. So was something attached to me. I don't necessarily believe it, but I've had odd experiences throughout my life. But this takes the cake. Hopefully it has sprinkles. I saw something very strange and specific as a child, and I always wanted to know if anybody else saw it. First of all, I have to say that although I've always believed that there's definitely something going on, I also try to explain everything because this paranormal world thing terrifies me. Well, the point is, when I was young, about 10 years old, I remember walking my dog through the vacant lot in my neighborhood when suddenly, and I know this is random, the kind of small skeleton with wings, a Barbie doll-sized thing, maybe it appeared. I remember that it stared at me from a distance of maybe a meter. My dog also stared at it, which made me realize that maybe it wasn't my imagination. And yes, we all know that children do have a lot of imagination. But at least at that age, you know when something's coming from your head. This curious apparition lasted a few seconds, until that specter, whatever it was, decided to fly away. My dog followed it for a bit, and at that moment I ran back home terrified. Obviously, my parents asked. I honestly didn't want to tell them for a moment because I knew they wouldn't believe me, but say I imagined it. To my surprise, my parents' faces kind of terrified me even more. Definitely seemed like they would believe me. Well, they knew I wasn't that kind of fantasy girl, but unfortunately they couldn't explain what I had seen. I remember sharing it with very few people, receiving similar reactions. They believed me because I said so, or maybe they're just faking it. I don't know. But I decided to let it go and hope for an adult explanation. And I'm 31 now, and although it's mostly buried, there are days when I still remember it very vividly, and it makes me want to cry. Feel like I need an answer. Hope to know if anybody's ever seen something like this. weird situation I found myself in while staying with a quirky family. I was homeless in Washington State from 1996 to 2004. About a year before I got off the streets, my friend Michael, who had known me for a long time, tried to help me out. I needed a safe spot to set up my tent, and he knew a family with their own property in Arlington, Washington. And somehow he convinced them to let me stay there. The grandfather came to pick me up and took me to their place. And when I got inside, I met the family. There was the elderly wife and 2 daughters. One daughter was just a little kid, probably 8 or 9. The other was a teenager. Gave me the little girl a Scooby-Doo shirt, and, well, she had said she liked Scooby-Doo. Didn't think much of it, and I mean, why would I? But apparently, they found it strange, but apparently found it strange that I did that. And I don't know, the whole time I was there, they didn't say anything to me. I stayed for a couple of weeks and rarely went inside, only when I was invited. Anyway, on my first night there, I was chatting with my grandma. I noticed her husband was missing. I asked where he was, and she bluntly said he went for a walk to meet the UFO. I was like, what? She said it happened regularly, and at first I didn't know what to think. And as time passed, I learned that the little girl was having night terrors, claimed that the little gray man was standing at the foot of her bed at night. One day, while I'm in the house talking to the grandpa, I mentioned how his wife told me that on one night I arrived, he went out for a walk to meet a UFO. He told me he worked for an aerospace company, had some inside information. Then he turned on the TV in the living room and changed the channel. I saw the Lockheed Martin logo in the bottom left corner and a rotating wire-frame diagram of an aircraft that looked like an SR-71. He said it was a channel that only employees could access. Not really sure why he decided to show that to me. One night, I suddenly felt really unwell. I was hit with nausea and dizziness and a headache. So I headed to my tent to rest and ended up sleeping for a bit. I finally woke up around 4 or 5 in the morning, lying on my stomach in my tent, which was around the corner from the back porch. I heard what sounded like the little people running past my tent to my left and up the back deck of the house. I didn't look out. I wasn't feeling well. Not long after that, they asked me to leave. A couple of years later, I ran into Michael at a church dinner for the homeless. I brought up that weird situation. He told me that those people accused me of paying too much attention to that little girl, and that was why they asked me to leave. I was super upset because it seemed like they were calling me a pedophile. If they really thought that was true, why didn't they talk to me about it? Or to the person who picked me up. Why did I only find about this years later? Seemed to me like they were just trying to find an excuse to kick me out because I knew too much. I obviously denied the accusation because who wouldn't? Told Michael that they were lying about me, and then he got mad at me for disrespecting people that he thought of as family. I think I said something like, "Fuck those people." And after that, Michael and I didn't talk for years. Skinwalker or opportunistic troll? So my fiance always talks about this time during COVID where she was outside walking home at like 4 a.m. around Westminster, Maryland, and a dude dressed like Richard Simmons, like the entire workout outfit, headband, short shorts, and long socks, jogging like he's part of the Ministry of Silly Walks, like a very dramatic cartoony way, borderline skipping. But it was very consistent, as this was just the way he ran. So she honestly didn't think too much of it because it was the middle of COVID where you have people wearing literal Halloween costumes at the grocery store. So it didn't immediately strike her as strange because he wasn't doing anything particularly alarming. so she didn't clock this as a suspicious thing right away. But then, so I'm walking down the alleyway towards this person. I see them cross the street ahead of me, so I keep walking because, well, honestly, it's whatever. He's not bothering me, so I'm in my mind just doing my business. Then as we cross and he's dead center of the street I'm walking down, he stops dead in his tracks without moving his body from the position it was in. So mid-jog turns his head, and only his head, and then drops down on all fours at once and starts crawling toward me down this alley. And he's still tilted. I was on the phone with my friend, and all he hears is me going, "Nope," and obviously ran away to my house. Her kitchen overlooks the alley, and so she was able to see the entire area, and dude just disappeared. So we talk about this a lot and always ponder, dude, but was that somebody trolling, or was it some crazy shit? Well, let us know if anybody else has encountered a Richard Simmons skinwalker type. Trying to start a discussion on this, because, I think I saw the spirits of my client's late wife and dog. I work as a private caregiver for a 91-year-old man with dementia. They have brain cancer, and they're in hospice. He's already lived months longer than predicted, at least by his neuro-oncologist. He's had good days and bad days, and today was a bad day. The family and I believe that he's very close to the end. Lately, he's been calling out for his wife, who passed away 4 years ago. He also has been asking for a small dog who died last year. And today, I'm sitting at his bedside, holding his hand and gently rubbing his head to calm him, as he's been agitated and anxious most of the day. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a white figure across the room. I knew I had seen something, but I chalked it up to me just being overtired. About an hour or so later, still at his bedside, I saw a similar white figure, but this one was very small, darted across the floor. And at that point, I truly believed I wasn't just seeing things. On days like this, where we believed he's barely clinging to life, he tends to get very scared and upset and calls out for God for help. He also will call for his wife. And there was one time he got upset with another caregiver for not kind of opening the front door because he said his wife was waiting outside in the cold. He would not settle until the caregiver opened and closed the front door. My theory is that he's afraid to cross over to the other side, so his wife and dog are trying to coax him over. Hope he's able to be at peace soon, fully reunited with them. Me too. My childhood experiences. I used to see apparitions when I was younger. One of my first experiences was with pets that passed away. I would see and feel cat feet on the bed. I was very close with this cat, and he died young. I also saw my old dog running past as a shadow when I was having a shower. I was freaked out as I could see him so clearly, even though he was a shadow, and it was very strange. Told my mother afterwards, and she didn't believe me. I also saw humanoid figures fairly often. They had no faces and were standing still. I only ever saw them on the street, never in my house or the school. I would also hear words in different languages. When I asked a question in my head, I would look up at the word and it would be my answer. I only know English, and it was always random languages. I had no real guidance with this, and I just was spooked. I decided all of it was not real because I wanted to stop seeing everything. It worked, and I was never connected like that again. There's more instances, but I'm short in time, and, well, has anyone else had similar experiences? Granny's Last Promise. My grandmother passed away in 2006 at the age of 92. About a week before her death, she promised me that she would contact me from the other side. Granny was devoutly religious, and to my utter annoyance, she was constantly trying to convert me to save me from going to a place that she describes as very bad, and if I didn't change my ways, I would shortly end up there. And although we were very close, we would often butt heads on the subject of an afterlife, and the fact that I was gambling mine away as though this life was just a wild night at the casino. The way I saw it, hoping for an afterlife was kind of like fishing for minnows while standing in the back of a whale. Although the following story proves nothing, I swear on my grandmother's grave that what I'm about to tell you is true, and has deeply affected my way of thinking going forward. So you tell me, did Granny keep her promise or what? And to put things in perspective, it was during May of 2006. And I was 12 months into a 13-month course at sea school. Think of it as trade school for the maritime industry. I was enjoying the last day of a 30-day shore leave in Cape Town, South Africa, by sailing ship. My sea training vessel, the steel-hulled bark Picketon Castle, was a 180-foot-long, 3-masted tall ship having departed out of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, a year prior. The captain once said, "I don't know much about steel-hulled vessels, but I know a lot about wool-hulled vessels, and that's why I sailed a steel-hulled vessel." But I digress. I was one of about 40 trainees with 12 professional crew members from captain on down to ship's cook, bound around the world from Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, Canada. But anyway, on that particular day, it was my grandmother's 92nd birthday. I decided to make a long-distance call from a phone bank in my sort of hostel in Cape Town to the small town of Cairo, Illinois, about 5,000 miles away in the USA. Granny answered after about maybe 6 rings, and her voice sounded a bit feeble. "Hello, hello," she said, through a crackling connection. "Hi, Granny, it's Brian, your favorite grandson. I was calling to wish you a happy birthday." Granny's voice turned jubilant. "Oh, Brian, are you back? Are you going to come visit me soon? I miss you so much. Going to make your favorite vanilla wafer banana pudding when you get here." "Well, Granny, I'm in South Africa right now, and I don't expect to be back until late June or early July, depending on the weather." "South Africa," she said. "Well, I don't know if I can make it till then, but I want you to go ahead and finish that course so you can get on with your life. Pray for me. This might be goodbye." And I wish what she meant when she said that. Well, I knew what she meant. Granny was old and tired, but not terminally ill. I thought she was being a little bit melodramatic, as she tended to be at times, so I tried to humor her on the subject. "I'll make you a deal, Granny. If you feel like you have to go before I get back, I want you to go ahead and let go. But once you get to the other side, I want you to contact me in some way, and if you do, then maybe I'll change my ways." Granny was very religious. As I'd mentioned from the offset, she was constantly trying to bring me around to her way of thinking since I was old enough to walk to church. And I'll never forget what she said next. Her answer sounded so intent, so confident, that it sent shivers up my spine. "It's a deal. I'll contact you." That threw me for a loop. So I quickly changed the subject. I told her that I'd be there in about a month and couldn't wait to dig into some of her famous vanilla wafer banana pudding. I felt like a feeble attempt at giving her something to look forward to. I said that hoping it wasn't the last time I would ever hear Granny's voice. We said our goodbyes and hung up the phone, feeling torn and a little bit bummed. Went back to my hostel and began packing my duffel bag. I had to get back to the ship where I would spend the night before early morning muster. There we would call roll, and we were divided into 3 watches. It was time to get my sea legs back. At 8 the next morning, and with all hands on deck, we departed Cape Town, then set a course up the west coast of South Africa. Our destination was St. Helena Island, a British territory in a remote part of the South Atlantic Ocean. The going was rough for that first week out, to say the least. And for the first 4 days, I was sick as a dog, as most of the crew. We were only averaging about 5 knots and 20-foot swells. And on the 7th night, this happens. While motoring under storm sails off the coast of Namibia one late afternoon, we got hit by a gale storm with winds approaching 70 miles an hour. The ship was tossed in heavy seas like a rubber ducky in a toddler's bathtub. Fears of sinking ran through my mind, but the Picton Castle was built sturdy and could handle nearly anything the weather could throw at us. I found out what the captain meant about sailing a steel-hulled vessel, but still, the sea has a way of finding out everything that was done wrong. We were wet and haggard by the time the watch was laid below, and then something happened that night that had left me feeling very uneasy. Allow me to go into a little more detail. After watch turnover that grueling evening, I'd gone straight to my bunk and pulled off my foul weather gear, hung it up by the hatch dripping wet, rolled into my bunk and was dead asleep before my head hit the pillow. And then, shortly after midnight, I was suddenly awakened by Granny's voice jolting me out of my sleep like a clap of thunder. It was short and sweet. She simply proclaimed, "I love you." I sat up in my bunk so fast I banged my head against the bottom of the bunk above me. "Granny!" I yelped to the pitch-black surroundings. But the only answer was the sound of waves slamming against the hull of the ship, and the wispy snoring of my shipmates nearby. I lay on my side, rubbing my head, trying to process what just happened. Her voice rang out with the youth that Granny had when she and I used to have snowball fights. It was when I was a toddler. That was the memory that the sound of the voice sort of was bringing back to my mind. I dismissed it as a dream, and I lit up my wristwatch to check the time. 12:47 a.m., just a few hours before time to go on watch. I rolled over and instantly fell back asleep. I'd all but forgotten about it, as we had much preparation to do prior to our arrival at our next destination in a week or so. There were many hours of ship work and learning to be done, and it would take all of our energies and focus to harness the sort of untamable South Atlantic Ocean. Several days later, we dropped anchor at St. Helena Island, right around 9:45 a.m., then divvied up the watches for shore time. Luckily, mine was the watch to be let go first, with a few hours to explore. We piled sort of into the skiff and just kind of motored up the dockside where we tied off the debarked with our backpacks, and we were spending money in cameras. I felt the urge to give Granny a call. I invited a couple of shippies to grab a pint and do a little laundry, which was the usual after stepping foot on terra firma. It had been a couple of weeks since I had a whiff of flowers and foliage. I could even smell the volcanic earth beneath my feet. I walked up the old cobblestone streets, scanning the area like a payphone. I found one outside of a pub, and pretty convenient. Slid my phone card through the slot, dialed Granny's number. But after a few rings, it was answered by my sister-in-law, Susan. Right away, I got that feeling in the pit of my stomach, telling me that something was wrong. "Hello?" Her voice chimed through, a much clearer connection this time. "Susan? Hi, Susan. I didn't expect you to answer. We just arrived on St. Helena Island in the middle of the Atlantic. Still about 2 weeks out, give or take. Thought I'd give a call and check in with Granny. Is she there? After a moment of silence, she told me that she had some bad news. Well, Granny had passed away a little bit after midnight on May the 23rd. She went peacefully in her sleep, and the doctor said it was of natural causes. My heart dropped, but something told me that she was in a better place now. Susan filled me in on what the funeral was and how it went, and I assured her that I would visit as soon as I got stateside. I missed Granny's funeral, but at least I could go visit her grave. So I'd failed to mention earlier that I had kept a journal of my daily life at sea. Usually just snippets of events that stood out to me so I could laugh about it later. Upon arrival back aboard the ship that evening, I went straight to my bunk and slid my seed chest out from under it. I opened the lid and took out my leather journal, now almost full front to back with entries over the past years at sea, and I flipped through the pages to the date of Granny's death, and there it was. Journal entry, May 23rd, 2006. The last paragraph read, "Had a dream last night that Granny woke me up from a deep dark slumber. Sounded as though she was right next to my bunk, and I even answered her out loud. Thought I might be losing it. The sea has a way of messing with a sailor's head, and a way of answering questions that the sailor had no desire to ask." End of journal entry. Fast forward about a month later to when I'm at the cemetery with Susan, my brother's who's showing me where Granny's resting place is. No headstone, just a small bronze placard inlaid at the head of the grave. Emily Pearl Taylor, May 15th, 1914 to May 23rd, 2006. A rare and beautiful soul, it read. I reached in my pocket, pulled out the single black pearl that I had collected from Mangariva Island in Granny's birthday present, and I made a little hole in the soil next to the placard and dropped the pearl in. "I love you too, Granny," I said. Still not going to convert, though. Are witches real? Me and 6 other friends were walking back to my apartment around 3 a.m. We were all very giddy and drunk, and my apartment was pretty close, by 4:45-ish from the club. I lived in Plovdiv, Bulgaria at the time, and on the road back there's an active railway station. We're walking through the underpass that connects the passengers with the different terminals that you have to go up on escalators and stairs and elevators. We see this very old lady pulling a kind of cart. It's common in old communist countries. Basically, it's a big shopping bag on wheels. And the first thing that sticks out is that the shopping bag is huge, double the size of a normal one. As we approach, she starts asking us for help to carry the cart up the stairs, as escalator and elevators are not turned on for some reason. And I quickly reply, "Sorry, we're busy." Quickly go past her. A few steps more, and cold shivers go down my spine. Instant dread sets in, and I quickly regret this. I usually always help old ladies and women, even when not asked for. But the alcohol in my current red-pilled brain thought it would be cool to not waste my time. Tisk, tisk, tisk. A few more steps, and I do a turn, and I run to her and apologize and ask to help her. She refuses and says something along the lines of, "You already made your choice." I insist, and the rest of the people picking up on my demand start picking up her cart. But it's insanely heavy, and she's also had a cane. So the 2 people grab the cart and 2 people hold her by her side to help her walk, and I'm just stupidly holding the cane. She starts telling us how she spent all day picking up herbs, that the cart is full of them, and that's why it's heavy. She's telling us that her train will be there soon, and stuff like what she's planning to use the herbs for. I'm pretty convinced that she's a witch at this point, and wasn't listening, just hoping to get out of the curse that made my spine turn to ice. And we're up at the terminal, and it's just us, her and my friends. and she now wants to give us a gift for help, and my mind is racing a bit, but I do my best to politely decline, and we leave. We talk a bit on the way back about, this with friends, and they sound like they got the same vibe from her. We're back at the apartment, or maybe at 4 a.m. We split into the living room and single bedroom, and all fall asleep fairly quickly. I'm kind of awake, kind of asleep, very delirious, and too tired to check my phone. But it sounds like there's a huge party going on around the whole floor. It's like having a blast. Never happened before. Around this time in my life, I was living alone for the first time, 20 years old, and I was in a different city. So these friends would visit every other weekend because we'd party and they could all sleep over. And this feeds into why the party upstairs was so weird. One, only older people lived in the building except me. Two, I had gotten noise complaints because we wouldn't always go to bed after coming home from clubs. And three, it only happened once in a year and a half of me staying there. Even though I know I'm not awake enough to go check it out, well, the party sounds incredibly awesome. I'm trying to go in my half-asleep state, end up going to sleep before getting the energy, wondering why no one else from my group is up to check it out. There's a feeling of being very welcome to join, and I can almost imagine exactly what's happening there just from the music and footsteps. And in the morning, I wake up and have vivid memories of the party, like talking to people, which is again weird since I never went. I'm the first one up and making crepes for the dudes, and they wake up one by one and start asking if I went to the party. They share similar thoughts and stories and perceptions, but none of us went. 6 or 7 years ago, and we remember it and we talk about it, tell our new friends, but none of us know what entity we actually encountered. I was wondering if it's something unique or a common occurrence. My ex became something non-human briefly. For some background, this relationship was full of mental and physical torment. It went on for about 10 or 11 months before I called it quits. Unfortunately, there were a few times I'd end up back at his presence after a breakup, and that's where my story comes in. Some insight into his beliefs. When we first met, we would talk about how important a good relationship with God was to a healthy relationship. He'd brag about having read the Bible front to back and would occasionally wear a cross. And flash forward to our second round of dating. He started showing his true interests that were entangled with Satan and pagan texts. He showed me where he had carved pagan runes into the walls and next to where he slept. There were times he'd show his interest in animal sacrifice or even praying to demonic beings. Why, I didn't leave immediately, I don't know. This relationship was a resort of desperation. I was lonely and felt this guy was the only one who could fix that, and so stupid I know now. But after we had broken up and I went to see him for the last time, we were talking, having a normal conversation in my truck, and all of a sudden, mid-sentence, I happened to look over at him, and every ounce of his life and shimmer had left his eyes. His eyes became voids, almost a matte black, and his face void from any emotions. I was staring at something other than my ex, and for an uncomfortable amount of time, in the moment my brain sent so much fear through my body and I just wanted to run. It was unlike anything I've ever seen before. I felt like prey right before it's killed by a predator. I've heard the narcissistic stare, and I know it could have just been as simple as that. My gut tells me there's something very off about that encounter. I've been seeing things at night. And for context, I was staying in an ED recovery house type center in Hawaii when I started seeing people and creatures during the night in my room while fully awake. The first time this happened, I woke up in the middle of the night in my shared 3-person bedroom. I saw a lady with long black hair staring at me from the corner of my room. I don't have schizophrenia or night terrors, so seeing this was very strange. I had also not ever seen any ghosts or really any paranormal encounters prior to staying at the house. I remember being confused when seeing her, but not thinking too much of it. My other two roommates were fast asleep, and the night nurse was upstairs, and nobody else was supposed to be working that night. So I said out loud, "Are you okay?" or something like that. I got no response whatsoever, so I fell back asleep. When I woke up in the morning, however, I was seriously freaked out and asked everyone in the house if they had seen or heard anything. That's when one of the other patients from a separate room spoke up. She said she had seen the same person when she was in the same bed as I was in months or so prior. She also said that a previous patient who slept in the exact same bed saw the same person I described. From then on, I saw people in my room almost every night. The staff began to sage and salt my room to stop the encounters, and it mostly stopped until a month later. And on this particular night, tripping over my words like an idiot, I tried to go to bed quite early. I woke up in the middle of the night due to insomnia, and I saw a grotesque creature. It was the size of a medium-sized dog and was completely naked and human-like with many human arms. It was positioned in a torso like a spider. It was climbing on the wall closest to me and was staring at me with beady eyes, and I screamed so loud both my roommates jolted up and started screaming too. They turned on the light, and I had sprung up from my bed and tripped over my roommate's bed, causing me to fall onto the floor. My tablet was using for meditation music slid across the floor with my headphones still attached. My roommates were freaking out as they questioned me. The night nurse came into our room running and was visibly shaken. I remember explaining to my roommate and the nurse what had happened, and it was safe to say nobody else slept that night. I felt bad because many of my roommates switched rooms because of what was happening that night, and it didn't help that I was sleep-talking and saying weird things. And I have since then discharged from that care center. Try not to think about what happened there, but I am still puzzled by the sort of events that occurred. If anybody has any similar experiences or insights to my situation, I would be grateful to hear them.